like last week. Okay, today is the 21st of June, 2016, and the title is The Consolidation of the Sanders-Hillary Clinton campaigns since the New Jersey and California primaries. And I am Robert Whaley, retired historian from Ohio University. And we're going to have a discussion with Dave DeWitt of the Athens News, who's a reporter and has been away for a week. And this is called Athens Speakout 371. So I'm going to begin this with a statement of what happened over the last 2 weeks, because the last time we had a show was on the 14th of June, while Dave DeWitt was on some other mission. So last week, we should have reported on the 14th of June the results of the California and New Jersey race and 5 other races. And on the 15th of June, Hillary won big in the last primary in the District of Columbia, and the Democratic primary is over, and they are all looking for the Philadelphia Convention. The debate is shifted over now already to the November election, and Hillary is going to need Bernie to help her in the joint campaign, which will begin on Labor Day. And so I want to summarize briefly the results of the D.C. primary. Clinton, overwhelming victory, 78.7% vote, 16 delegates. Hillary is strong among the blacks. And Sanders got 21%, 4 delegates, 16 delegates, 4 delegates. So this just cements Hillary's victory. But Hillary already won previously and announced it when she won the New Jersey race, technically. But the California race also cemented that. So Indiana gave Barack Obama his opportunity to be the nominee for the Republican Party. So the primaries are over in both parties, and the black votes are still up for debate within the Democratic Party. So I was voting for Sanders against Hillary, and Sanders got most of his votes from whites. But if money wins, the Hillary is winning because of money, and maybe Trump will over-Trump with money in November. That's still to be seen, but right now Trump's polls are falling rather rapidly, and it looks like Trump is on the defensive. We're going to see what happens in Cleveland. So you want to say anything about this Trump-Hillary campaign and the Democratic Convention in Philadelphia and the one in Cleveland for the Republicans? You're going to go there in person.
I'm going to be at both conventions in person.
You're going to be at both?
I'm going to be in Philadelphia and Cleveland.
Okay.
Well, I was a little disturbed this morning at the most recent polls in Ohio, where Hillary and Trump were tied at 40% each. She's pulled away in other states, other battleground states. She's polling 47 to 39, 46
but these are
to
national
38.
polls.
No, these are in these states.
Yeah, I know, but it's the New York Times that reports the
right.
statistics, you see.
Right, yeah. But in Ohio, I was just surprised that it's as close as it is in Ohio and Florida, for instance.
Well, Ohio used to be a swing state, but it's getting more and more Republican. So
It seems to be.
It doesn't surprise me. You know,
But
Pace's
only
got a
in-
Republican machine. Portland isn't part of the Republican machine.
That's true. But the Democrats still have, 500,000 to 1 million more voters registered in Ohio.
Registered.
Right.
But they didn't turn out in the primary, did they?
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
And most of the party switching that happened was from Democrat to Republican in the primary.
Right.
Not by a large margin, but a little bit. So anyway, I think Hillary's still got some work to do, but I think Donald Trump, his inability to make a general election pivot so far, at least, is going to continue to hurt him.
Yeah, Trump's polls are going down nationally.
Yeah.
Because he wants to speak off the cuff. He wants to be the oral demagogue.
Right.
He doesn't want to write a speech out.
He's not disciplined at
No,
all.
he's not disciplined.
As a candidate. Yeah.
Right. But that might not be sufficient because 74% of the electorate are only high school graduates, and they are far more influenced by TV than senators who have a written speech.
Yeah.
So I think the race is still somewhat questionable who's going to win. But right now, I'm not making any predictions. Well, you're the predictive man. We'll see when you come back from Philadelphia what happens.
Yeah, lots of stuff can still happen. We've still got a long way to go.
Anyway, Hillary announced her victory on the 9th of June in New Jersey, early at 7 p.m., and then at midnight, she confirmed that with the California, where they got the sweeping delegates, okay? Mm-hmm. So in California, Clinton got 55.8% of the delegates, and she had a huge number of votes, 1,941,000 votes, 269 delegates, and Sanders 43%, 0.2 with 206 delegates. So Sanders didn't do so well as he had hoped. And Hillary won all of the big cities.
Yeah, she really cinched it there.
Yeah, she got Los Angeles, San Francisco, and she had the media behind her.
She pretty much closed the deal with that one.
Right, and so the only question I have about it, we know the blacks were united. We know that money was united. The big question mark is the exit polls among the women. Mm-hmm. Hillary had the older women over 45, and Sanders had the younger women under 45. So that's going to be a factor in...
That sounds about right. No,
yeah,
that sounds like
that's
what
going to
I
be a
would've
factor
guessed.
in the future. Okay.
Well, Hillary's now going to have to work to consolidate younger people and progressive people behind her candidacy.
Well, maybe Bernie can help.
I think so.
That's our hope as Democrats.
but something's owed to Bernie now too at this point, looking toward Philadelphia, with regard to what he can extract from the Democratic Party as far as the platform and having seats and writing the platform.
Well, that's what you're going to discover.
Yeah, we'll see how good he is at that.
Yeah.
But I think that he's got a solid, with the millions of votes that he got, with the strong showing that he had in so many states, with the states that he did win, he's got a strong argument to people within the Democratic Party that his side of the party has to be represented. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of talk amongst the chattering classes right now about Hillary picking a progressive vice presidential nominee and who the possibilities are for that.
It's all speculation.
Oh,
I'll wait for the polls. Anyway, to look at the past then, in New Jersey, Hillary got 63% of the vote, 79 delegates, and 47 delegates for Sanders. That was officially putting her over the top at 7 p.m. on the 7th of June. Hillary again won the blacks, the Hispanics, and had the money. The women are somewhat divided, and that's going to be an interesting debate within the Democratic Party. Okay, I guess take a look at Trump. Trump didn't have to campaign because he wrapped it up in Indiana.
Right.
But his polls seem to be sinking.
Nationally.
Yeah, because of the media. Now, whether that stays down, that's somewhat questionable too.
Well, I think you take the situation in Orlando. I mean, he failed one of the bigger tests that a presidential candidate can have, as far as you have a national event, you have a tragedy, a crisis on your hands. And so those are the times where I think candidates especially have to look presidential. And I think he came out and he totally flubbed it. He couldn't even get the basic facts of the case right. 48 hours after this tragedy happened, he was claiming that the shooter was an Afghani. He didn't even know that this guy was born in Queens, New York. And if you have somebody...
his father was born in Afghanistan, so there's some truth to that.
Well, yeah, but no, the guy's an American. He was not Afghani. And Donald Trump was saying that he was from Afghanistan, and he wasn't. He was born in America, and he lived in America his entire life. And so my point is that if you're going to be president and you can't get basic facts right, well, that doesn't look very presidential. It's a failure.
Well, there are technical facts, and there are facts which the voter perceives. Now,
the facts are the facts, though. It doesn't matter if you can't get the facts right.
You got the facts. He was born in Queens County.
Right.
Okay, fine. But that's not gonna convince any Trump voter.
Oh, and I'm not trying to convince the Trump voters. The Trump voters are far gone. You give them up. You give up 30% of the population from the start.
Are you a reporter or an advocate?
You're never going to get 30% of the people who already support Trump, and they'll believe anything that he says. And I think Trump said it best at the beginning when he said he could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and these people would still vote for him. They would. I'm not trying to convince them. But to the great silent majority, to the independents, to the people who generally decide elections, the people in the middle, as it were, when somebody comes out and wants to be president and in the time of national crisis can't get basic facts right, you lose those people. He loses those people.
All right. You're saying what the New York Times is saying, and I'm saying, as a historian, I think the Democrats are going to have some difficulty in campaigning in the white South, and Trump is going to have a natural base in the white South. So
I agree with that.
How is the Senate going to go? And how many electoral votes will Hillary get? That's questionable. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Well, I agree.
It's not in the bag.
I agree that the Democrats will have trouble in the white South, but frankly, the Democrats don't really need the white South.
Well, that's what they've been saying for
as long as Hillary can win. As long as Hillary can win Virginia, Colorado.
Okay. I still like.
That's all she really needs. Florida would be nice.
Okay, okay, but I still like.
But we don't need Alabama. We don't need.
That's what the Democrats say.
We don't need Georgia.
That's what they say. But the Republicans won in 2000. And they won in 2004.
George W. Bush won those states. But he also won key states like Colorado and Ohio.
Yeah, okay.
And Florida and Virginia.
Okay.
When Barack Obama won, he won Colorado and Virginia and Ohio.
All right, okay.
So I think those
the Senate is still in the hands of the Republicans.
Yeah, and Democrats will need to win the Senate for sure.
And what I'm saying is we should not forget Howard Dean, Howard Dean says in order
The
for
50-state strategy.
you got to campaign in the South.
No, I agree with the 50-state strategy, and I don't believe in conceding ground.
Okay, good. All right, so
I
that's
agree
going
with
to
you
be
there.
yeah, that's going to be the contest.
I don't think the Democrats should concede any
and
ground.
Trump's polls are sinking at the moment, and he hasn't got the money.
No, he does. He has his war chest is pitiful.
$1.4 million, is it, or something like that?
Yeah, it's pitiful. and here's another disturbing thing that I read today is that his campaign spent something on the order of $6 million so far, and over half of it went to companies owned by Donald Trump.
Yeah. Okay.
Or his family.
Corruption.
So, I mean, does he really want to win this thing, or is he just finding ways to pay his own company?
We don't know what the PACs are going to do.
Yeah, they're going to spend a lot of money. We know that.
Yeah.
That dark money since Citizens United.
Yeah. That's...
Oh, yeah, we don't know what they're going to do except that they're going to pour... I mean, this is going to be a $1 billion presidential election. More money is going to be spent this year.
That's what I've been worried about for some decades.
Yeah, that's plutocracy.
That's plutocracy.
That's oligarchy.
That's Citizens United.
That is.
Is that going to get lost?
They are literally trying to buy our democracy and succeeding in a lot of ways.
So if Hillary wins because of Wall Street money, it's going to be a weak Hillary win. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and here's a concern for Hillary too. They are now talking about Elizabeth Warren as a potential running mate, and Wall Street hates that idea.
Well, yeah, she's a real threat.
and the poor white sexist racist South hates that idea.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Race is still a factor.
So
guns are still a factor.
That's a big. I mean, so if she were to select, just playing a thought experiment here, if she were to select Elizabeth Warren, she would gain a lot of ground with progressives.
Right.
Although even some of those Bernie or bust people have claimed that, Elizabeth Warren's a shill now because she's even been inconsiderate. But we'll put that aside for a second.
Right.
So she gains ground with progressives that she might have lost to Bernie.
Right.
But she's going to lose the support of East Coast banking.
Right.
And Wall Street, and lose the funds that they give. And she's going to lose, even more so, a lot of the poor, sexist, racist, white collar, blue collar vote,
right,
who say, well, first you give us the black guy for 2 terms, and now you're going to have a woman with a woman running mate. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, a lot of those,
right,
the way they think, it's chauvinistic, but it is what it is, and they're not going to vote for it, And it's sad. We can all, say how repugnant that is, but it's a fact.
Okay, so to finish up the Sanders race, Sanders won in Montana and got 11 delegates, and 10 delegates went to Hillary. It wasn't a big victory, but it shows you why Montana was for Sanders. Montana has a radical tradition going back to 1916 when Montana allowed women to vote, and there was a feminist by the name of Jeanette Rankin, a pacifist, who was a friend of the American Indians and was elected to the Senate before it was a national.
When the state legislators were picking the senators?
The state the rules for getting elected are in the states. So the western states, Wyoming and Montana and Utah, allowed the women to vote long before the East because they had a low population and they wanted to get into the Union. So that's why Wyoming was the very first state to allow women to vote.
Okay, but they did it just to have more of a voting population.
Yeah, that's right. They had to have 600,000 votes to become a state.
It wasn't this big commitment to women's suffrage. It was all about
states getting into the Union. Yeah, that was it, and that's how Utah got in the Union.
Wow.
Utah wanted protection from the federal government, so they got into the Union. Wyoming got into the Union, and Montana got into the Union.
Of course, it's this calculated political maneuvering instead of any commitment to
That's the old
ideology.
States' rights.
In Wyoming, the women outnumber the men.
Now, today?
I believe so.
Now, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, anyway, Jeanette Rankin was elected in 1916, and Woodrow Wilson changed his mind about being neutral in the First World War, and he then asked for a declaration of war in 1917, and the House of Representatives voted overwhelming for Wilson, but there was something like 52 isolationists, pacifist senators from the West, and representatives who voted no, and Jeanette Rankin was one of those. And then, of course, when the war got going, she had to resign for patriotic reasons, and then she came back in 1941 to be in the 1941 vote.
Was she still an isolationist?
She was still a pacifist, still an isolationist, and she
voted against Roosevelt.
She was one who voted against Roosevelt.
It was only one.
One,
and it was her. Wow.
She resigned the next day. She knew she couldn't campaign.
Wow.
So that's the importance of Montana local history. Yeah, the vote was 388 to 1 in the House of Representatives. She was in the House.
Jeanette Rankin was the
one. But she resigned the next day and went home, and because she knew if she stayed, she'd be charged with treason.
Yeah.
But anyway, Jeanette Rankin came back as a symbol during the Vietnam War, when there were a group of pacifist women who were against the undeclared war in Vietnam, who set up the Jeanette Rankin Brigade. And they went around in Washington campaigning for the memory of Jeanette Rankin. So that's where I first heard of her. I heard of the Jeanette Rankin. Who was Jeanette Rankin?
During the Vietnam War protests?
During the Vietnam War. I didn't know anything about her in 41 or in the history of 1910. History has long roots, is what I'm saying. So anyway, Hillary still has some problems now in Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, and Libya. What is the future prospects of war? That's why I'm bringing up Montana and the pacifist sentiment in the Sanders campaign.
I would hope that Hillary would be smart enough to keep a steady hand at the wheel.
That remains to be seen.
And not embroil us in any serious foreign conflict.
She drifted into the Iraq War.
She did.
I mean, she drifted it to the, not Iraq, Libyan War.
As Secretary of State.
Yeah. And she drifted into the Yugoslav War. And
she maintains a hawkish posture.
That's the problem. That is the problem. We don't need we need a smart hawk.
But we don't, she wouldn't,
That's future. I'm not predicting what she's going to do.
Yeah, it's hard to say, and it's hard to say how the various, situations in the Middle East are going to evolve right now, considering the
That's right.
kind of chaos that ISIS throws into that
That's
region.
it. That's
Daesh,
it. Yeah,
but,
that's it. So anyway, just to round up this pacifist Middle West isolationist, Sanders won in North Dakota, 13 delegates. Hillary got 5 delegates. And North Dakota is an all-farm union type. La Follette, third-party sentiment, okay. So La Follette and the socialists, are kind of in the background, progressives. The progressives of 1910 have an influence on the modern progressives, which Sanders is trying to remember. Anyway, Clinton won in South Dakota. That's a more conservative state. She got 18 delegates, but it was surprising how close it was. Sanders got 16 delegates, even in South Dakota. That's the place of Wounded Knee in the Indians and so forth. Yeah. Okay. And McGovern. McGovern was a fluke. Okay.
South Dakota or North Dakota?
South Dakota.
South Dakota.
Yeah. So anyway, the delegates were 10 delegates each. 10 for Hillary and 10 for Sanders. But she won the technical vote with 51%. And Sanders got 49%. So that's just the trends, anyway. Okay, what about the total delegates? Let's
the latest counts?
Yeah. From what I have, Hillary now has 2,800 delegates. Hillary has pledged delegates, 2,200 pledged delegates, 2,800 official delegates, 22 are pledged, and 581 are superdelegates. But she has enough of those other delegates to win without the superdelegates.
She has enough pledged delegates to
go over the top, see.
Okay.
And Sanders has 1,800 delegates, and his are closer on the pledged. Of those, he has 1,832 pledged delegates, and then Sanders only has 49 superdelegates. That puts her over the top, and it was 2,383. It's still there's still a couple of delegates that could switch, in theory. We'll find out. We'll see how loyal those delegates are when they get to Philadelphia. And but fortunately, the Republicans go first in Cleveland, so they may trip up. So anyway, I guess we've finished that technical thing now. I'll say something about the Athens Messenger and their report.
Oh, yeah.
The Athens Messenger made a report on the 8th of June, 2016, and they had an editorial from Robert Reich. And the title of this editorial is Trump's Strategy to Win by Destroying. That's kind of provocative. And what he's saying is that Robert Reich, who's an economist at Berkeley, was supporting Sanders from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Even though he was Bill Clinton's former labor secretary.
That's
and classmate as a Rhodes Scholar at Oxford.
Right. He was too progressive for Bill.
But Robert Reich has done a great job. He focuses mostly on wealth and income inequality.
That's right.
He has a great documentary on Netflix called Inequality for All.
That's right. So anyway, Reich attacks Trump, puts most of his energy on Trump. And he backs what he might call Jewish morality. And Sanders and Reich are both Jewish. And the Christians and the socialists and the liberals should rally around a humanitarian rule. The poor should be subsidized by the rich. And this real estate dealer is out on the far right wing. That's what Sanders is saying. And Reich is saying. So, and then he points out that democracy is about the law, and the law is the reason for backing Hillary and not Trump, because he doesn't have the legal background, and he's attacking Jews, Mexicans, blacks, anybody on racial, religious biases. So that's what Reich is saying. That's a good editorial, in my opinion. A good wrap-up, a farewell to Bernie.
Yeah, I think he does a good job of illustrating Trump's strategy of divisiveness.
Right, right.
The old divide and conquer mentality.
Right.
Trump likes to manifest resentment between groups of people.
Right, right.
And he uses that resentment and that divisiveness to his advantage.
In the primary.
Politically. He did in the primary.
With oral whites who are not too well informed on the history.
Yeah, low information,
right.
Poor white voters, typically. I understand why that strategy worked in a Republican primary. Maybe I'm a little too optimistic or have too much faith in the American people, but I don't believe it's going to work nearly as well in a general election. I like to believe that I know that there are a lot of ignorant, racist, sexist, low information people in this country, but I like to think that
you look for the best in humanity.
I try to.
Not the worst.
I'd like to. I try to.
My wife looks for the best in humanity.
I like to think that this country, the best of our nature, will prevail.
Okay.
I'm not sure that Hillary Clinton represents the best of our nature, but
well, she's a compromise candidate.
But she's definitely a sight better than Donald Trump.
Pretty halfway.
We have to stop here and have a little review. I am Robert Whaley, historian, who's been supporting Bernie up to this point and has to concede that Bernie is not going to get the nomination. But I voted for an honest Jew over crooked Christians. And that's my justification. How many Republican senators are going to put money in the background and talk about humanitarian or Christian ideals? That's the big question.
Yeah. Well, I supported Bernie too. And I do think
I want to say this is my interlocutor here, Dave DeWitt. He works for the Athens News, and he and I have had a friendly debate. We're 99% in agreement and 1% in disagreement. And we're emphasizing the agreement today.
And in that vein, I also supported Bernie in the primary. Because I think that he was the best person with the best ideas.
So why are Trump's polls going down? Let's get over to Trump.
Why are his polls going down? Well, I think it goes back to at least in part, to the point that I was making earlier, where I think a lot of the independents, a lot of the people who at least claim to be independent, because I think a lot of the people who claim to be independent end up falling on one side or the other, 90% of the time. But they like to claim independence. I don't think he just comes off as so unpresidential.
Okay.
To them.
Well, I don't think presidential is a viable concept. Presidential means you wear a tie and you speak to the New York Times and you speak to NPR, and that's what Trump calls political correctness. It's a propaganda cliche.
Yeah, but even Trump's claim to not be politically correct is politicking. Because
it's politicking.
Because even
he's got the low road. He's talking to the white working class.
But it's so disingenuous though, because even he is very politically correct when he needs to be, or like when he said "my African American" the other day.
What do you mean he uses that term?
Well, he'll use terms that are like, he is not this.
He doesn't want to be completely.
He is not this candid, guy. He'll, instead of saying the outright racist thing, he'll say, "Oh, people are saying this."
Oh, yeah,
or instead of using the terms that he wants.
He says he loves women. He says he has blacks working for him in his real estate company.
He is.
But what are their wages?
For somebody who claims this mantle of being this outspoken, plain-spoken, non-PC guy, it's very selective. If you pay close attention to the words and phrases that he uses and the way that he puts things, he is being a total hypocrite about that. He is not being straightforward. He's not being this candid guy. He's using all sorts of whistles and waffle language himself.
Right.
So that I understand why he's using that argument. I understand why it appeals to people, but it doesn't hold water with me.
It doesn't hold water with me either.
It doesn't. It's not accurate.
But we're intellectual elitists. We're living in an ivory tower in Athens.
Yes. Or at least a red brick tower.
The problem is that in Texas and Florida, they're not reading the New York Times.
Yeah.
And they're not looking at NPR.
Right. That's true. And they don't care. They actively hate those things.
That's true.
They see them as, you know.
So anyway, Sanders seems to be saying exactly what he said 6 months ago. I have plans to take care of China, but he hasn't told us what the plan is.
All of his policy proposals are shrouded in vague
mystery.
Yeah, platitudes.
I'm going to build a wall against Mexico, and they're going to pay for it.
It's all platitudes. There's no actual policy proposal there.
Anyway, it's humorous to me.
I'm glad that you could get some laughs out of it. I try to. I wish I could laugh at it more.
All right, on the 9th of June, Elizabeth Warren comes out on MSNBC, and she endorses Hillary and kind of apologizes for kind of threatening Hillary in a way. But Elizabeth is a very shrewd politician. She said, I'm a woman, I'm a young woman, and I'm not going to run against Hillary. I'll wait until 2012 if Hillary flops. That's shrewd politics.
No, and she's a very, I call her the Professor Senator Warren has never been dumb a day in her life. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's very shrewd.
Anyway, she likes Bernie for that 1% tax.
Of course.
And she hopes that Hillary will tax and take care of the unemployed. And
her and Bernie are natural allies as far as
that's
fighting the wealth and income inequality
she's
battle.
For the reconciliation.
But she was smart to do that, to wait until the primary was already fought. And now I was hoping that she would bring progressives back into the fold a little bit more than it appears that she has so far. Because I guess a lot of, there's that percentage of people who now, because she endorsed Hillary, she's in the machine, she's part of the establishment. And I don't really understand that way of thinking.
You got to win the election. That's very simple.
Yeah, but it's good to have people to have the people behind her that she does now. For Hillary Clinton to have President Obama and Vice President Biden and Elizabeth Warren, all these surrogates out there, that can really bare some teeth and take some bites out of Trump's hide. I mean, these are all really good things for Hillary. These are all really strong, smart people to have in her corner.
And it was Senator Warren who brought up Judge Gonzalo Curiel, who was a first-generation Mexican-American, was born in the United States, doesn't have any accent, has an established position as a judge.
Just like the shooter in Orlando. He is an American.
And
born in Indiana.
Trump sticks his foot in his mouth by denouncing this guy as unqualified because he's a Mexican background.
Yeah.
He doesn't know what a first-generation American is.
He's
qualified to get the job.
Yeah, this man has had a decades-long career in jurisprudence. He's by all accounts a responsible.
What happened to the Republican freedom of
thoughtful
opportunity?
and intellectual jurist, and Trump comes out and submits this odious slander that somehow because he has Mexican heritage he can't be a fair and impartial judge. It's obnoxious. It's ridiculous. It's ignorant. It's racist.
Right.
And I think I've already used the word, but I'll repeat it. It's odious.
Okay, fine.
It's disgusting.
Okay.
I don't see why anybody thinks that Donald Trump could be.
Yeah, well, okay. You have your opinions.
Yeah, I do. They tend to be strong.
Mine are a little more cautious because my candidates have had trouble winning.
Yeah.
McGovern did not win. McGovern did not win.
Yeah.
Pacifism is an outside idea.
Yeah.
The hawks usually win.
They do. But we don't have a pacifist candidate in Hillary.
Nope, she's got the hawk vote, and Bernie is a little bit cautious about that. Mm-hmm. But as a Jew, he knows the costs of war. He knows the sacrifice of ordinary people in war.
Yeah.
And he's not eager to get into a war in the Middle East.
No. Well, anybody who really knows or studies war and knows what a horrible thing it is, it's the worst thing that humans do, on a massive scale in civilization.
Right.
And everyone should be that cautious.
Yes.
But I do think that as far as the Middle East goes, I think that the first Clinton administration's dealings with Bibi Netanyahu
That's going to be
might have given her a little bit of fair warning about what type of person they're dealing with in him, and so I think that she'll be a little bit more cautious.
Maybe she will
with Bibi than she might have otherwise would be, considering her hawkish posture.
Maybe she learned from Sanders.
We can hope. I mean, I guess that's all we can do is hope.
Even Trump goes to that Netanyahu affair.
Well, the idea of Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump meeting together to figure out what's best for the Middle East scares the crap out of me. I can't imagine that those guys would come up with anything other than war with Iran.
Yeah, that's right. That is a good issue. A good issue to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, because that Bibi wants to do it, and
that's right.
And Trump, with all his machismo, his bravado,
right,
and his lack of true knowledge about the balance of power and everything, that scares me.
Well, I want to say one more word about Biden. Biden and Warren were at this constitutional conference. And I think that Biden did a better job than Warren did, because Biden spoke about his judicial experience. Mm-hmm. The Clarence Thomas thing?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And he didn't use racism as the major issue, which everybody else does. Mm-hmm. And Biden said the main reason why he was against Trump is that Trump doesn't understand the rule of law. And the rule of law is the American Constitution, the rights of the Senate.
Separation of powers.
Judicial
review.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And then Biden finishes up. Well, incidentally, he was also probably a racist. But I thought Biden's reason.
No, that's a great point.
Yeah.
I totally agree with him. I do not believe that Donald Trump understands basic 8th grade level civics.
That's it.
I don't think he understands it. I don't think he knows it. And that's why I often say that he's not a stupid man, but he is an ignorant man as far as history and basic civics go.
That's it. You got it. That's wonderful. Okay, we're getting closer to the next issue. I want to say a little bit more about Robert Reich, because he wrote another editorial. Thanks, Bernie, on the 14th of June. Okay.
I got to give shout out to the Messenger for running Robert Reich.
Yeah, two
columns.
editorials. Thanks, Bernie. And this is the real endorsement of Bernie's economic ideas, the 1%, the 99%, and that Bernie won 22 states. And that he's running against the Republican National Committee and the Democratic National Committee and the oligarchy and the plutocracy. So he put the real economic issues on the front table. So we can raise another point about this debate between Barack Obama and Donald Trump and the meaning of that debate. You know what they're debating about? What is this heart of the Barack Obama-Donald Trump debate?
About the Middle East?
Well, it's on television. What are they debating about?
About the Muslim,
okay. It's
Donald Trump's unconstitutional proposal to ban Muslims from entering the country?
Well, they didn't use the word unconstitutional.
Well, they should, because it is.
They're worrying about the ban. What does the ban mean? Okay. You got to be very cautious about that.
Well, he says he wants to ban Muslims from entering the country, which is a blatant violation of the First Amendment.
Okay, but this is the problem of oral propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
Does that word ban Muslims, does that mean all or some or forever? These are the qualifying debates.
Those are great questions that I think Donald Trump should be forced to answer.
Yeah, okay. Well, he does. In his oral argument, he says, well, I've only made a suggestion. We'll wait until I become president.
See?
That's his cop-out.
It is a cop-out.
That's a demagogue.
It's this waffling.
And then he said, we want to have a ban until we figure out what we want to do.
There's a phrase that the kids these days use. It's just saying, not saying is what they do. Is they say, I'm just saying, but I'm not saying. That's Donald Trump's entire campaign.
Yeah.
He's just saying something unconstitutional or racist, but he's not saying it. I'm just saying, not saying.
Well, it's a debate about the nature.
We should ban Muslims. Just saying. Not saying, but we should. But I'm not saying that, but we should.
Yeah,
you know?
well, that's what the debate is about.
It's gutless. It's spineless. And I don't see how people see him as such a tough guy when he can't even commit to anything without waffling back on it.
Well, that's what it
walking it back.
That's what a demagogue does.
I know. It's horrible. It's just horrible.
You know, when I first heard about Joe McCarthy, I didn't understand what a demagogue was.
Mm-hmm.
Could you define a demagogue? What makes a demagogue different from an ordinary politician?
That's a great question. How would you define? And that reminds me, I'm going to have to think on that for a second, but that reminds me that didn't Donald Trump have some connection with Joe McCarthy's old legal counsel or something?
I think that did go back to that.
Like he learned a bunch of stuff from Joe McCarthy's old legal counsel?
Yeah.
I forget the guy's name.
Yeah.
That's what that reminded me of. Do you have an answer for that?
Well, if we look at Joe McCarthy's career, when I first heard about it, it was Joe McCarthy's denouncing communism. Well, I was a naive voter for Truman. I was a naive voter for Eisenhower. Yeah, communism is bad. Okay. But he gets on the radio, Wheeling, West Virginia, and he says, I have in my pocket 205 communists that are in the State Department. Well, the radio lights up. They got telephone calls from all over the United States. Let's have the text to that speech. Well, the next week, he didn't have the text. And he delays that and delays that. Well, I don't think it was 205. I think it was only 29. So he delays that and delays that because it's all oral.
Yeah.
That's the demagogue. And finally, he says, well, I got the list from J. Edgar Hoover, and he gave it to the House Un-American Activities Committee. Well, this is not good documentary sources. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Where the New York Times, when you have to appoint the Secretary of State, you have to have a written text of just what are the qualifications of Henry Kissinger. So Henry Kissinger puts his vita down there. You know, I was born in Germany, and I served in the American Army. And I went to Harvard, and I have a PhD, and I wrote 3 books. So I'm qualified to the job. Okay, Henry Kissinger got nominated. But who's going to nominate Trump if he can't write some memos? That's going to satisfy the State Department or the Defense Department.
Yeah.
You got to have a document. That's the teleprompter. He can't. They always say, go back on message. Go back on message. But
he never stays on message.
That's the demagogue. We got the parallel between. That's what I want. It's
using tenuous.
It's changing your mind every time, and depending on hearsay evidence. A court of law.
Hearsay evidence. And preying on people's fears,
right,
and intimidation.
Every lawyer knows that a written contract has far more validity than an oral promise.
Right.
And you have lawsuits over that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what Trump does over and over again. He will always say, but he won't say that. He won't just say. He won't claim for instance, Barack Obama is a Kenyan Muslim who wasn't born in America and is out here to destroy America. What he'll say is, I have heard, or people have said.
That's right. You got it. You got it.
People tell me, or it's been said, or he doesn't claim the idea as his own. That's how he skirts around it.
Correct.
And it's it's very Orwellian, really.
Yep. Well, Orwell says that all politicians are propagandists.
Yeah.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
Trump is a demagogue more than a propagandist.
He is.
But Hillary and Barack Obama are both propagandists. They put all of the evidence in favor of the Democrats and none of the negative.
Of course.
You put your best foot forward.
And that's the nature of that's
politics as usual. Yes.
Yeah. Never giving the game away.
Question here.
I wonder, do you think Donald Trump makes these statements and everything? They're his own statements, or does he make these statements on the advice?
I don't think he gets advice, no. I think it's Donald Trump.
I think they probably have discussions, and there are probably people in those discussions that, push back against him and stuff, but I don't think they script anything out. I think that when he goes out there, he just does everything off the cuff.
Well, he's recently
and he makes those
fired his
game-time
campaign
decisions.
manager.
Yeah,
because the old campaign is, you got to have a script. He says, well, okay, I'll try that.
And this is
the next day he says, I went off script. So he says, I resign.
That was the funniest thing that I saw this week, too, is Lewandowski, after he got fired, Corey Lewandowski, the fired campaign manager, comes out, and I think he's on Face the Nation or something, and he's talking, he says that Donald Trump gives the best speeches of any presidential candidate in history, and I just about lost it when I heard that, You think, like William Jennings Bryan and the Cross of Gold, and FDR on the budget in Pittsburgh, and Abraham Lincoln on his famous candidates, and Donald Trump talking about the size of his hands. Like the greatest. Yeah, Donald Trump's the greatest orator. Let me tell you that I can tell you. He uses words, not many words. Sometimes one, sometimes two words.
Well, I personally learned what a demagogue was after I began teaching. And I had a friend who had 3 years more teaching experience. He got his degree from Cornell. And he was giving me the old boy network. Who's at Cornell, who's at Harvard, who's at Yale. These are things I never thought about when I was working on my PhD. When I was working on my PhD, I was focused on the Spanish Civil War, and I had to put blinders on my eyes and not pay much attention to politics. Yet he said, the first time I heard it, he said, well, Joe McCarthy was a demagogue. Well, I had never heard that when Joe was on the air. Mm-hmm. When they denounced Joe, they denounced him for attacking Eisenhower. But they didn't say that he was a demagogue. They had to have a long proceedings. Who's lying? Mm-hmm. Who was Lieutenant Zwicker? You remember there was long hearings. McCarthy said that Dwight Eisenhower was coddling communists. Well, what was his evidence? There was a dentist by the name of Zwicker who had been a communist.
Right.
And was still kept in the army, you see. Mm-hmm. So they finally got, there was a guy by the name of Joe Welch. Joe Welch was a Boston attorney, and he finally ruined McCarthy's reputation in the eyes of the old McCarthy supporters on a human event story, see. Mm-hmm. And they used homosexuality as the issue. Mm-hmm. Roy Cohn.
Oh, Roy Cohn. Yeah.
And G. David Schein.
Right.
Who was G. David? And did you try and get him out there? Mm-hmm. And they even hinted that he was a fairy. Mm-hmm. And then finally McCarthy See, McCarthy hired these guys because they were Jewish. And the Jews were already saying McCarthy is anti-Semitic. So he says, well, I'm not anti-Semitic. I have 2 Jews who are working for me.
Oh, yeah. Plausible deniability.
So that was the boomerang, you see. This guy Welch said, Mr. McCarthy, why have you denounced this poor 20-year-old guy and ruining his career by alleging that he is a communist? So then the sympathy vote went out.
Oh, yeah.
Down with Joe McCarthy. Down with Joe McCarthy.
Right.
It was done by a guy named Robert Welch, who was a lawyer in Boston.
And it worked?
It worked. As far as...
Well, and Murrow contributed, right?
Well,
when Murrow came out and denounced him.
Murrow denounced McCarthy from the beginning.
Yeah.
What this lawyer did was to get at the anti-communist fanatics and point out that Joe McCarthy didn't really know anything about communism. And he was just using that issue to persecute people.
So he made him display his own ignorance.
Yeah, right.
And that's, and generally speaking, that's the way that you have to take down a demagogue.
Right.
Is you have to make them,
you have to fight fire
you
with
have
fire.
to expose them for their
Being a
hypocrisy.
That's right. That's right.
And then their own followers become disillusioned, and then they have to pay the price.
And then Joe McCarthy died of alcoholism.
That doesn't surprise me.
He had to resign. He lost the public opinion. He lost the public opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, we have to wind it up here. I want to thank you for coming.
Thank you, Professor.
Debate is the oxygen of democracy. We're not going to have a show next week.
Okay.
We're going to have a show after you get back.
Right.
Let's look at the calendar.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me, Professor.
Yeah, let's look at the calendar.